Hello and welcome to Miracles and Messages, Powerful Beyond Message with Cynthia Mazzaferro. I'm so delighted to have you here today, and I have a very special guest. Her name is Carol Graham. So let me tell you a little bit about Carol. Carol is a charismatic speaker whose stories bridge hope. She inspires transformation and healing by using her own compelling life experiences to engage and connect on a deep and emotional level. Through laughter and tears, her audience learns how to move forward without denying the past. Carol has survived the challenges of many illnesses, devastating personal losses, and financial ruin more than once, yet has refused to become that victim. Her goal is to share with others how to survive and thrive. Carol hosts a bi-weekly talk show, Never Ever Give Up Hope, in which she interviews people with remarkable and heart-warming stories of how they conquered overwhelming obstacles and achieved success. Never Ever Give Up Hope has an international audience in over 120 countries. Congratulations, Carol. Carol is also an author of a fast-paced, award-winning memoir, Battered Hope, the blog Never Ever Give Up Hope, and a regular contributor to numerous blog sites. She has a monthly column in Book Fun magazine and has been published in several anthologies, including a bestseller. In 2015, Carol received the Woman of Impact Award from Faces of Women magazine and Author of the Year for her memoir, Battered Hope. In addition to motivational speaking, hosting a talk show, and writing, Carol owns and operates 2 jewelry stores, is a wife, mother, grandmother, and together with her husband has rescued over 30 dogs. So it is with great delight to welcome Carol to our conversation today. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Cindy, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm so excited to actually get to know you even more. I've been reading your story, your book, Battered Hope, and it is just remarkable. And you have such a wonderful way of bringing the reader in. It's the words, the emotions are beautiful. So we'll talk more about that as we go on, but it's really a gorgeous story of pain, and I love all the spiritual hope that you bring into it. So, Carol, what made you want to write Battered Hope?
I didn't. My daughter pushed me for about 10 years and kept telling me, Mom, you have to write your story. And I was one of those people who had gone through so much pain that I didn't want anybody else to know. And so I buried a lot of things, and even some of my good friends and family didn't know some of the things I had gone through. And so when she told me that, Mom, you have got to write your story, my biggest question was why? And she said, my generation needs to hear it. And as soon as she said that, because they live in a generation, my daughter's 30, they live in a generation where hope is not second nature as it was for some of us older people growing up, right? And so she said, you have gone through so many things that I know even my own friends are going through or have gone through, and they don't have that hope. So you've got to write your story. So it took me 10 years because it was a lot of pulling up pain that I didn't want to, and I would put it aside for a while. And then when I finally did get it done and had it edited, she made me rewrite it 3 times. So she's a pushy girl.
Well, it's beautiful. But I cannot totally understand that understanding of when you write, it is very challenging and emotional, and there's a lot of additional healing that has to occur, a resolution. And like you said, bringing up those pains and also revealing them to the world is a whole nother story too. Being exposed, and it's like people know my dirty little secrets were not yours, but things that happened. And it's people, we protect ourselves. We don't want people to see our pain and suffering.
We don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing, because of something that I did in the past, you don't want to be judged for who you are now.
Right. But I think also it comes down to, it's not even so much a judgment. We, at least I believe very strongly, and I see with my clients as a life coach, that we suppress how we feel. We don't want people to see we're disappointed, we're unhappy with them, or unhappy with ourselves or life or whatever, because nobody wants to hear that doom and gloom. They don't want to hear, because then they feel that they're responsible to make you feel better, to resolve the problem. And so we tend to, as a defense mechanisms, our brain tells us, don't let people know the truth. Don't let people know you're hurt, you know? And so it's a fine line how much we actually share, but we need to share and be authentic and true.
I think that's one of the places where fear comes in, because I didn't know how people would respond, even as I mentioned, some of our closest friends. And so when the book came out, there was a whole realm of new emotions that, I was not prepared for, because some of them were angry that I never told them, or that you suffer in silence. And
Right.
one of the reasons that I have started my talk show, Never Ever Give Up Hope, is for that reason. So people have that platform that they can share their stories openly and candidly. So.
And that's a beautiful gift that you're giving to the world, because we do need to be able to share. You know, it's our false understanding that we have to become this strong pillar of strength where we can't feel that we can crumble or rely on someone or lean on someone. And one of the things I love that you bring in your books, and I also brought in my book, Powerful Beyond Measure, is the spiritual aspect, the connection to the greater source, whether you call that God, the universe, creator. I know neither one of us profess our own religion, but knowing there is a greater source. And I love that you incorporate that in your book, because it's really a foundation to what has helped you move through all that you've experienced.
Exactly.
Can you speak a little on that? When you, I guess maybe what I would say is, when people read Battered Hope, what is it that you would like people to take away from it? What is it that you're hoping that they feel empowered?
Well, basically, I think the biggest thing would be to relate.
Yeah.
Because you're on chapter 3, and basically the only real trauma, I think, is in chapter 1, and that leads, and you won't know the answer to that till chapter 7.
Well, actually, there's a lot of things that happen in 3 chapters. I have a lot of notes here, and there's maybe one climatic thing happened earlier, but there's been a lot of things too that is still going on.
Now I forgot your question. Basically, that's right. So I wanted people to be able to relate, because, for example, when I was raped and left for dead, there are women out there who have been very ashamed to bring that up, as I was, and all those years later had to. So consequently, when people relate, then they can look to see how you survived through that and, went forward, rather than get stymied and stay there and dwell in that pain. So essentially, I think it's the relation that I was the message that I want to get across. If I can do it, you can do it.
Right. And what I love, because I truly believe that we all have this greater connection to our soul and to the greater divine. And you often wrote about that a little more subtly in your book, throughout the chapters I've been reading, about, I've heard this voice. This voice kept telling me, do this, and or don't do this. And you were like listening to it. It was like this voice. And I have a couple parts in my book that I also say, this voice kept telling me to do something. I'm like, I'm having an argument with my voice. My inner voice saying, what do you mean do this? Like, I'm not going to go do that. That's crazy. And how it really saved your life and other people in your life. I don't want to tell too much of the book, that saved their lives. And so how does intuition and that communication that we get from self and source actually live in your life today? And it definitely is part of your story in Battered Hope.
I think that when I was a little girl, first of all, I grew up in a minister's home. And so you're kind of set apart for one reason, because people expect you to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And you're not. You're usually as far from it as possible. But I was one of those kids that I really wanted to be perfect. And the reason was because my mother was dying, and I knew that this would be one thing. If I rebelled against anything, it would really hurt my dad. And so I worked hard at that. But that also puts a lot of pressure on a little girl. But the other side, though, to answer your question, is that it also gave me a lot of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Because my dad would tell me things like, whatever you feed will grow. If you feed your faith that everything is going to be okay, that's what's going to grow. And the other will die. If you feed your fear and you filled with what ifs and if onlys and I can't handle this and I won't be able to make it and I don't know what I'm going to do, then that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to be in turmoil and confusion and you'll be growing in the wrong direction. So that's some of the, he instilled a lot of those kind of things in me. So I had the advantage, I think, of growing up with a very wise man and a spiritual man who really helped.
Definitely laid the foundation there for you. And it's amazing because you talk in your book about how you kind of took on the role of trying to fix things, people. And it still do. And I think that just goes along with the way I wrote in my book too, about how we take on certain roles, expectations, beliefs and behaviors based on our young years. And so here one of your siblings passed away. It really hurt your parents, and then your mother's ill. And so all this inner dynamics that was happening with your family as a young child, you wanted to fix it. You wanted to make everything happy and healthy and joyous. And so you became the upper.
Right.
And and that can be exhausting because we can't fix other people's lives. And I'm sure you probably can attest to that, right?
We try.
And we really shouldn't, because it's their life, it's their journey. And by us telling people what to do, it's not necessarily the correct solution. And also it leaves us feeling frustrated and unheard when they do something that they want. And so then there's that lack of judgment. They don't think you're doing the right job, making the right suggestions. So I always think it's really wonderful. And I love that you pointed that in your book.
That's not the kind of fixer I was.
Yeah.
I'm very strong in my decision to not judge. And that's one of the reasons that I have been able to be successful in different arenas. In our jewelry stores, for example, we have street people that come in regularly, and we're like ma and pa, and we give them money. We listen to them. We make them feel wonderful. When they leave, they said, this is the best part of my week, that kind of thing. So yes, I would like them to stop drinking, but I don't tell them that.
Right.
You're living the example in front of them and showing them love no matter where they're coming from. And so it's not a judging. That's not the kind of fixing. The kind of fixing that I like to do is, for example, with my mother being that so ill and then eventually dying, is how do I make her better?
Right.
How do I fix this? How do I make her feel better at the moment? That kind of.
Absolutely. And that comes through because I consider you more a compassionate fixer,
yes.
Like, even the way you viewed your first husband. And it's always out of heart and love and compassion that you can help to resolve. And when I meant that about judgment, it wasn't you as a judgment. It was how offering help to others, how they can perceive whatever you give them, even out of compassion.
That's
good,
right.
Judgment. It has nothing to do with you being a judger. It's how they perceive it. So I just want to clarify that. But no, your heart is always of a tenderness and a compassion and love. But even with that, that's what I'm trying to say to you, Carol, and that's what I meant to relay, and maybe it didn't come across. So let me clarify that. Out of this wonderful place that you live and exist in as this young, beautiful child, and you continue to have this energy of bringing love and trying to find resolution through faith and compassion and kindness, that there was ugly things in your life that rejected that, and repelled it. And how did that impact you? And how has that, how have you been able to work through that now as you're more senior from when you were growing up into understanding that?
I think one of the keys here is that I never questioned it. And I know that there, especially when I interview a lot of different people who've had different things happen to them, there's times when we say, why me?
Right.
Why me? Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? And I don't ever recall going down that road. And I think that was one of the reasons why the different things that happened to us totally out of our control, I was easily and quickly to forgive. Because wherever they were coming from, whatever they did, they had to be the ones to deal with that. And I was not going to take that on and hold that, whether it be a grudge or resentment or pity party. Oh, I threw so many pity parties and nobody ever showed up, is what. But they were short-lived, and they certainly only had me attending. But we do, because but on the other hand, it wasn't this attitude that carried forward to why me and that kind of thing. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And it's really amazing, because I think dealing with different people all over the world, that so many people can get into that victimhood or that pity party type attitude, and that your grace and compassion was always present, even when catastrophe hit, which is a beautiful attribute. It's one of your spiritual gift, I would say, in that no matter who you deal with, even the streetwalkers or your own personal family, that's who you are, that's your heart that you give, which is a beautiful, beautiful sharing of your essence. So that's really gorgeous. And I guess what I'd like to encourage people hearing Carol's story is to realize that just because you are a tender heart, like Carol is, doesn't mean you have to become hard and create this wall to protect yourself from being hurt. Would you agree?
Totally. Absolutely.
Because that happens, people say, I've been hurt so many times, I can't trust anymore, or whatever environment or society or people have, like you said, victimized you. But it's like really embracing and seeing that beautiful gift. Like I just said, how Carol's gift is beautiful from her heart, and this essence that she just emanates, just kind of perspires out of her, is something that she chose to hold on to, and to allow it to always be present in her life. So I encourage you. Do you have a book right there, Carol? We're going to talk on, but let's show that book a couple times. Isn't this beautiful? Battered Hope. It's absolutely great, by Carol Graham. And I encourage you to read it, because it will really allow you, through her words, to even allow yourself to experience the emotional energies that we hold inside of ourselves, which I talk about differently in my book. But it gives you permission to allow you to experience them. Even reading Carol's story, it'll allow you to reflect on your own story, and allow you to weep and laugh and question how you approached all those things.
I think I'd like to just address something you just said.
Great.
And as a dog rescuer,
yes,
we have rescued at least 30 plus whatever my daughter has rescued and brought home prey and goats and sheep and horses and you name it. They are helpless, and there are many people who are helpless. And like when my daughter had friends, for example, who wanted to have children, she says, get a dog first, because you really learn to relate with those who depend on you when you're taking care of an animal, especially if it's one that has been severely abused, and you have to win over their trust. And that is so parallel to how we deal with people. And so when you have that heart, that compassion for those who have been hurt, it doesn't matter if it's an animal or a person, you're relating on the level of, I can help you just by being here, just by giving you a hug, just by not judging you, by not asking you too many questions. Or anyway, I just wanted to interject that.
I love that. I think that's so wonderful. And thank you for that. You do rescue so many animals. I think that's a beautiful parallel, because it is easier to love an animal. They love you unconditionally.
Right.
And that's a beautiful way of an instrument to help the inner healing that you need to go through. So I think that's a beautiful way to consider using that as a tool. So Can you talk a little bit about how forgiveness comes into the picture in resolving your own pain and moving on from things that, happened in your life or to you?
Do you want me to share anything that happened, or do you want
Oh,
to
yeah, that's fine.
quickly? Okay. Well, in my book, Battered Hope, there are 12 chapters and a minimum of 12 traumas. And so it covers a huge arena of circumstances. And as I mentioned earlier about being raped, and my father brought me up and instilled in me that no matter what someone does to you, by trying to get even or get back at them or whatever, will only hurt you. The other person doesn't really care. They've already accomplished whatever they were going to do to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was my first husband who abused me, and he was the one that actually did have me kidnapped and abused and raped, etc.
Right.
I realized that he was a lesser man. He was the one that was hurting. And so all I had to do was get over my pain, my whatever it was that I was going through. But to hold a grudge against him would not benefit me for one moment.
Right.
I speak a lot on forgiveness when I do a lot of speaking as well across the country. And when I speak on forgiveness, I do not like the saying that's forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had forgotten what I had gone through, I would not have been able to write my book. And I would not be able to help those who are going through it and to understand the pain that they are going through for whatever, the situation is. So yes, forgive. And it's very easy for me. I don't know why. I think possibly because it was instilled in me, and also it's what I choose. And so it's an automatic. That doesn't mean I don't get angry and I don't, want to say, oh, I want to get rid of that person, whatever happens. But that's moment. It's just a moment. It's just a fleeting second. And we all have that. And I certainly understand that emotion. But then I can say, do I want to hold this? Do I want to hold this against them? I mean, you almost can say stupid things like, well, they're just a lesser person than me anyway, and you just have whatever it takes to get you to move forward. But choosing to forgive, and no, not necessarily choosing to forget. That doesn't mean I dwell on it, but it does mean that I do remember, so that I can remember what happened and help someone else.
Exactly. Because forgiveness is not necessarily forgiving them. Forgiveness is forgiveness of allowing you to release and say, you're not going to hurt me any longer.
Right.
And that's important for people to understand, that we're not condoning their behavior or the situations, actions that caused you harm. We're not saying what they did was right. We're not giving them permission. But
Right.
What we're doing is we're allowing that hurt not to continue to impact you. And that's part of the forgiveness component. Because often if you say, I forgive even your husband who had the rapist attack you, even if you forgive that rapist, the rapist not necessarily will forgive themselves. Forgiveness needs to be given to yourself to allow you to move forward. And it's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, because when you allow that energy from someone that caused you harm or something that caused you harm, it just continues to harm you, because you're allowing it to be fueled to cause the harm. So it's up to you to decide, I choose not to have that action or activity to harm you any longer. It's not easy always to do though, Carol.
No, not at all. But it also has been proven that many people who have not been able to forgive and had bitterness rise up in them have been the recipient as a result of many autoimmune diseases. Arthritis is one of them. Many
diseases. And usually cancer, the number one emotion for cancer is anger. So, if you have anger towards, like for you, could be against your rapist, or you could even be angry at your mother. How could you die when I was so young? I needed you. So anger can be towards anyone, someone that you love even. That just left. But anger is usually connected to cancer. It's kind of proven. And that when you can release and forgive what you're angry at and who, it releases the energy that resides within your body that will then promote health of those tissues. and destroy the anger cancerous.
Right. Besides that, it doesn't feel very good.
It doesn't.
Not to that.
This is great. So what would you say, now that we've talked about forgiveness, what are maybe 2 tips that you can tell listeners that helps people to forgive? What do you encourage them to do or use themselves in that process?
That's a difficult question because each situation is unique, right? But I think what it comes down to is choosing, and forgiveness becomes a lifestyle, literally a lifestyle. Just as many other things become a lifestyle. It's who you are. And so I'm not the type of person, because I have chosen not to be the type of person who is going to have road rage, for example, because it's their problem, not mine. And so you just don't. It's a difficult question to answer, in that.
I like what you answered, and I think it comes down to that elemental, easy process. Because I think sometimes speakers and transformational leaders, they say, oh, you got to do step 1 through 6 or whatever. And really it comes down to you have a choice. And you said that. And I so agree. In my book, I talk about I choose to because I can. Well, I choose to live a happy, harmonious life that's forgiving towards the traffic jam or the incompetent lights or cops that are out there not managing the traffic, whatever. And that because I choose to, I'm not going to allow that anger and frustration to fill up my vessel, my body, and my inner core, inner essence. And I choose not to be in that space. So we all have a choice. And I love that you said it's not just a one-time situation. The other thing you talked about, it's who I am. It's where I want to live all the time. Mm-hmm. And I love that because I think it's so easy for people to say, I got off the phone with my mother or my sister or whoever, and we had crosswords, and then 3 months later, you're still feeling angry about that phone call. Well, that's not living a place of peace and ease and grace, right?
No, it's not comfortable.
It's uncomfortable. And that resistance is, even when you speak to them on another phone call 2 weeks later, there's that hesitation in your voice. There's that resentment that, oh, they didn't say what they should have. And it's negative for everyone and what you experience in your life. And I just love this. And I'm so glad we can kind of delve into this because, Kara, I think you've had so many things in your life that could have left you as a bittered woman, and angry. And you aren't. You're, a woman of grace and love and compassion, and sharing your story could not have been easy. I've shared a part of my story and as well, and I had to forgive my father who left and abandoned us.
Well, we had, like you just touched on maybe 1 or 2 things that happened in my life, but we've had so many horrendous things happen, including my husband going to jail for a crime he didn't commit. And the man who was the only witness to our side committed suicide weeks before the trial. These kind of things that are just bizarre. They're just so far out there. And how do you put one foot in front of the other and keep going?
Right.
And so there were many, yes, being raped was awful, but it certainly was not as bad if you want to list in order of, what was the worst thing that ever happened. Is when our business partners stole our entire business underhandedly and locked us out. And it was our business. We started. It was easily going to be a multi-million-dollar business. And we went there and we were locked out. And they took it over because of some fine things that they were able to negotiate, because we trusted them and without realizing what they were doing, right? So how do you walk away from that when you have been left penniless and these people are almost laughing at you and they enjoyed what they did to you? You just have to be patient and realize that in the end they're going to get bit.
Well, not that we want to cause harm to someone else either, because that usually comes back to bite you in your own butt.
Exactly. But it wouldn't have helped any, no matter if I stomped and ranted and raved and cried and pointed fingers or tried to discredit them or anything else, because they were that type of person and I'm this type of person. Right. So who would you rather be?
Right. Right. So let me ask you this question. So what do you feel is important for others to know when they are struggling and they feel lost and alone? What is it? Do you use your first line of defense is to pray, is to ask for guidance? What is it you first have found to be so elemental for you?
I believe it would be my spiritual foundation.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You know, that it's, and as I mentioned what my dad said, it's what I feed. So I'm not going to feed my fears. Okay, so this happened to me. What am I going to do? Instead of, oh, so this happened to me. What should I do? And just taking a different approach to whatever happens to us, to try to look at it from the positive without putting your head in the sand. I hate that. I do not, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't suggest that at all. You know, that when something really bad happens to you, that you just like,
Like you don't want to sugarcoat it and pretend it's something different than it is.
and that's part of the forgiving and forgetting, like I talked about. I know what happened. I understand what happened. I will probably never forget it. But what can I learn from this?
Right. And
What?
how do you move on? Right. And you know, there's I'm not sure if you've heard of the American Indian story, Which Wolf Do You Feed? And you can Google it, it's in YouTube, and it's the same kind of a concept. Do you feed the wolf? Which wolf do you feed? Which the wolf is you, of course,
Right.
the fear or the compassionate, loving, you know, wolf. So and whichever wolf you feed is the one that's going to survive.
That's right. Exactly.
You have a choice. So this is amazing. So is there anything that you want to add about your book, where they can get it?
What I would suggest, it's written as a novel, which you will soon find as you get into the chapters. It's written as a novel. Most people don't get to only chapter 3. They can't put it down.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's very
And
good.
the reason for that is because you want to know what happens. Did she survive this, and how did she survive this? So that's essentially it, that it's written as a story. You will get very angry at the author often. I've had people email me and say, how could you have, allowed this to happen to you, like you had a choice, because they are learning as they're reading the story to love you, because you're drawing them in as an author. And so they want to do the rah, 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 and they constantly see in you battered. And so the name of the book is Battered Hope. But when I share my story, I usually say battered, beaten, broken, and bruised, because we all have hope. And this is what the essential story is. We all probably are born with an element of hope. We hope mommy comes and feeds us, whatever. You're always looking at, the future in hope. And when that is constantly hurt and beaten and broken and bruised and battered, do you lose hope? And that's one of the things that the message that comes across is, no matter what happened, whether it's one trauma or 12 or 20, no matter what happened, to always find something to A, be grateful for in the situation, B, what can I learn from it, and C, it will get better. I will not stay here. One expression that I've heard over the years, and I really appreciate it, was someone was talking about what they were going through. And it hit me that you are going through it. You're not staying there. And that too is your choice. You can stay there, dwell there, and die there. Or you can work at getting through it, over it, and survive it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And and as I'm reading it and falling in love with you as I'm reading Battered Hope, to me, I see you as a pillar of strength. It's your hope. It's your faith that gives you your strength. And that in some ways, I never see that your hope is ever battered.
Right.
You have a strong hope. And I say that because it was kind of almost as I was reflecting on the chapters, and I say, this is a young woman, as I'm going through your lifeline here, that has experienced so many things, to you and to others, that you could have had your hope battered and shattered, where you think it's unattainable or to be able to hold on to it again. But isn't that what's really remarkable about hope? It is always out there and present in our lives.
One thing that might be a good example to share with you is when I was in my 20s and I had been sick my entire life. And I was told, finally, they found out what was wrong with me after 17 doctors, is I had uterine cancer.
Mm.
And when we went in to the doctor, he said, I have an answer. I finally have an answer. And so you go there with great hope. Yay, I'm going to feel better. Whatever's wrong with me, you know, they're going to fix me, etc. And as my husband and I are sitting there in that doctor's office, and he says, I'm really sorry, Carol, but you have cancer. And you have two choices. So again, hope, because you're used to being hopeful, rises up two choices. I don't just have one, I have two. Mm-hmm. So what are my choices? Your choices are hysterectomy or death. Well, I looked at the doctor and I said, I don't like those choices because I'm going to have a baby. Now, I can't have a baby if I'm dead, and I can't have a baby if I don't have the parts. So I don't understand these choices at all. To me, those aren't choices.
Right.
I refuse to accept that. And he stood up, never forget this, all those years ago, stood up from behind his desk, leaned over, pointed his finger in my face like a little kid, scolding me. And he said, then lady, you go home, you suffer, and you die.
Wow.
So where's your hope?
Exactly.
So I went home. I suffered, and I'm still here.
And you have a child.
And I have a child. But what I did was, the process took me 14 years. Oh, and when I left that doctor's office, I spun on my heel and I said, I will walk in here pregnant one day. And 14 years later, I did. But it didn't just happen the next day. Mm-hmm. And this is another message that the book gives. Don't give up. Hold on. Don't let go, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We only know what's happened in the past and what's happening now. So I went home, and I remember laying on the sofa in so much pain that I thought I'd rather die than live anyway. And that's where I began to realize that I needed to be grateful for what I have. And so that's where the whole grateful message came from. And the more I lay there thinking about how grateful I am for all the good things in my life, the better I felt. Right. And 3 weeks later, again, you'll have to read the book to get the story. But
it's amazing. You have to. I encourage everyone to go out and buy. I know you can buy it on Amazon and Books and Normals, and of course bookstores have it. It's everywhere, and it's international, isn't it, as well, Carol?
Yes.
It's amazing, but it's, as a spiritual teacher and an author as well, talking about empowerment, I love the message of not losing hope, in that we can create that hope, and hope comes with the faith, having faith in something, realizing that's what you're hopeful about, a future outcome. And that I loved when you said, I will walk in that doctor's office again, pregnant someday.
I did.
You did, but you created the vision already. She was a visionary. She manifested that energy, that outcome to occur in her life. And now, we talk about, but it wasn't really our timing. It was divine timing. It was 14 years later. But, sometimes we become impatient.
Yes.
And we need to realize that, like you said, tomorrow's another day. And to always have and enter into that existence of now, the timing of now, living in the moment, with the expectation of having hope and wonderful life that you can experience, and to be present in experiencing joy. So many people say, I want happiness. And I said, well, you can have happiness, but you don't have to necessarily feel joyful. And that comes into that gratitude aspect.
Right. Right.
When you're grateful for everything in your life, even the small little inconveniences that are not perfect, but they're still present and part of your life, then you can truly be joyful. And that it sends you in a place that's so remarkable in your life. Well, this has been fabulous, Carol. Do you have any parting quote or words that you'd like to share with our audience? I encourage everyone to go out and order or purchase Battered Hope by Carol Graham. It's a phenomenal read.
Thank you so much. Well, and the funny thing is, it's just my story. And it's written as a story, and it's written to encourage and hopefully help somebody. And I've got so many so many people that have come back over the years. It's been out 2 years now, I think, and that have just said, I don't know how I would have made it through, but I know now that I can. And I had one woman who was in her 90s. She was actually the first person that bought my book. And my husband said, you have to buy this book, when he was in the store. And, and she read it, and she came back the next day and she said, I'm really angry at your wife. And he said, why? And he said, because I stayed up all night reading her book.
I can see why. It does captivate you and pull you in. You just want to linger. It's really beautiful.
But that's the point is, it's not that you're sharing trauma but that's life. And we all go through different degrees of trauma. And so it's written as an encouragement, also as a story. And I just encourage you to, and also to contact me. And the other thing I wanted to say to your audience is if there's anybody out there that has a story of overcoming incredible circumstances, that's what my show is about, Never Ever Give Up Hope. It's all people who have overcome unbelievable circumstances and survived and thrived and become successful. And it makes my story look like a Sunday school picnic by comparison, because this human spirit is so remarkable, and what we can get through and overcome and become better as a result. And so that is basically the message.
It's a beautiful message. And I just want to say, Carol, your story is wonderful. It's your life. And my story is a wonderful story, but it's nowhere compared to yours or someone else that maybe is more horrific. And of course, there's a judgment there. Whose life is more horrific? And so I would just encourage everyone to realize that we don't have to equate how powerful our life has been, how negative, how positive it's been. It is our life, and it's living our life and choosing to see it and grow from it, experience it, and realizing that our life is every single moment of every single day, and you have a choice, as we've talked about a few times today, how to experience it. And so I encourage you to find that power within yourself, be empowered, be inspired, be hopeful that everything that you truly want in your life can be present in this moment. And so thank you so much, Carol, for spending time with us today and sharing your story. And go out and order and purchase Battered Hope. It will truly be a vehicle for you to also experience your life with a different vision, with renewed hope and grace and love.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.